To the Galactic Council, he looked harmless, just a polite human diplomat in a well-pressed suit. No weapons, no armor, no threat. So when they launched their ambush, they expected fear, surrender. What they got instead was silence. Controlled, calculated silence. Because the man they attacked wasn't just a diplomat. He was humanity's most specialized asset, Death, disguised in a suit. And the moment he moved, the council realized their mistake. Far too late. The diplomatic facade, the transport shuttle, glided silently through the void, approaching the massive structure that dominated the space between star systems. Zenith Council Station hung like a jewel against the darkness, its crystalline spires reflecting the light of distant stars. Inside the shuttle, Dr. Elena Kovacs sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her breathing calm and measured. She wore a tailored navy suit, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, and her expression revealed nothing but professional composure. She had been traveling for 3 weeks to reach this place. 3 weeks to prepare her arguments, review her documentation, and remind herself why she had chosen this path. The diplomatic path. The peaceful path. The path that required words instead of weapons. Patience instead of precision strikes. Negotiation instead of neutralization. She was good at this work. Better than most people knew. But there was a reason for that. A reason she hoped would never need to surface. The shuttle docked with a gentle vibration. Elena stood, collected her slim briefcase, and walked toward the airlock. Her assistant, James Park, a young diplomat fresh from Earth's academy, hurried to keep pace beside her. He clutched a tablet loaded with briefing materials, his eyes wide with barely contained excitement. Ambassador Kovacs. The council chamber seats over 5,000 representatives, James said, scrolling through his notes. 87 species will be present for our petition. The Krell Empire holds significant influence, and their Chancellor Drexeth has been vocal about opposing human expansion into contested trade routes. Elena nodded once. I'm aware. We'll address their concerns with facts and economic projections. Logic tends to overcome prejudice, given time. And if logic doesn't work? James asked. Elena glanced at him, and for just a moment, something cold flickered in her gray eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by her usual warm professionalism. Then we'll try a different approach. But let's start with diplomacy. That's why we're here. The airlock opened, and they stepped into Zenith Station. The main concourse stretched before them like a cathedral built for giants. The ceiling arced 30 meters overhead, covered in bioluminescent panels that shifted through colors no human eyes were meant to see. Beings of every conceivable shape moved through the space. Some walked on legs, others floated in gravity bubbles. Still, others slithered or glided or teleported in small jumps from platform to platform. Many turned to look at the humans. Some with curiosity, others with barely concealed contempt. Elena met each gaze with a polite nod, never breaking stride, never showing discomfort. She had walked through worse than judgmental stares. She had walked through fire and blood and screaming darkness, and she had emerged on the other side. This was easy by comparison. They reached the council chamber an hour before the session began. The chamber itself was breathtaking. Circular tiers rose in concentric rings around a central speaking platform. Each tier held seats designed for different physiologies, some filled with water, others with methane gas, still others exposed to vacuum with force fields for containment. At the highest tier sat the 12 members of the High Council, representatives of the most ancient and powerful civilizations in known space. Elena took her assigned seat in the petitioner section, a modest area near the chamber floor. It was a position of low status, appropriate for a species barely 2 centuries into space travel. She didn't mind. Status was just perception, and perception could change very quickly when circumstances demanded. The chamber filled rapidly. Thousands of beings took their places, their conversations creating a symphony of sounds that human ears struggled to process. Clicks and whistles, subsonic rumbles, and ultrasonic harmonics, all blending into a noise that was almost overwhelming. Elena closed her eyes briefly, and centered herself, letting her enhanced neural implants filter and categorize the sounds until they became manageable. Background noise. The session began with a resonant tone that silenced all conversation. A floating crystalline being, the council speaker, drifted to the center of the chamber. Its voice emerged from the air itself, translated simultaneously into every language present. The Zenith Council recognizes the petition of the United Earth Government. Ambassador Elena Kovacs may present her case. Elena rose smoothly and walked to the speaking platform. She felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon her. Most of those eyes held skepticism. Some held amusement. A few held something darker. She had learned long ago to read a room, to identify threats and calculate responses. Old habits died hard, even when you tried to bury them. Honored council members, Elena began, her voice clear and confident. Humanity comes before you not seeking charity or special consideration, but rather requesting fair access to trade routes through the Kepler corridor. Our economic projections show mutual benefit for all species currently utilizing these routes. We offer advanced biotechnology, cultural exchange, and a commitment to peaceful cooperation. She activated her presentation, holographic displays materializing in the air around her. Charts showed trade flows, economic models, resource distributions. Everything was professional, reasonable, and backed by solid data. The human proposal is noted, came a deep, rumbling voice from the High Council tier. Chancellor Drexith of the Krell Empire rose from his seat. He was massive, nearly 4 meters tall, his body covered in thick scales that gleamed like polished obsidian. His eyes were vertical slits of burning amber, and when he spoke, rows of crystalline teeth caught the light. However, the Krell Empire has significant concerns about allowing such a primitive species into contested space. Elena kept her expression neutral. Primitive is a relative term, Chancellor. Humanity may be young, but we've made remarkable progress in a short time. Progress? Drexith laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You barely understand quantum mechanics. Your ships are slow and inefficient. Your people live for barely a century. You have no natural defenses, no armor, no claws, no venom. You are soft creatures playing at civilization. Murmurs of agreement rippled through sections of the chamber. Elena noted which species joined in the mockery. The Krell's traditional allies, mostly. The Cytherian Collective, the Vorshek Dominion. The crystalline assembly remained silent, as did the elder species who rarely involved themselves in petty politics. Our physical limitations have never prevented us from achieving our goals, Elena said calmly. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and extinction events. We've built civilizations from nothing. We've reached for the stars despite every obstacle. That's not weakness, Chancellor. That's determination. Determination. Drexith descended from his tier, his heavy footsteps echoing through the chamber. He approached the speaking platform, towering over Elena. Let me tell you what I see, human. I see a species that took thousands of years to leave its home planet. I see beings so fragile that a simple change in temperature can kill them. I see animals that evolved as prey, not predators. You have no place among the great powers of the galaxy. Elena looked up at the massive alien without flinching. And yet here I stand, Chancellor, speaking to you as an equal, representing a species that refuses to be dismissed. An equal? Drexith's laugh was cruel. You're nothing. Humanity is nothing. And I will ensure you remain nothing. He gestured with one clawed hand. Hidden panels in the chamber walls slid open. Krell soldiers emerged, at least 50 of them, their black armor gleaming, their weapons charged and ready. They moved with military precision, forming a perimeter around the petitioner's section, trapping Elena and James in a ring of armed force. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in alarm, some trying to leave their seats, others demanding explanations. The council speaker chimed frantically for order. But the noise was overwhelming. James grabbed Elena's arm, his face pale with fear. Ambassador, what's happening? Drexa's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. What's happening is simple. Humanity has become too ambitious too quickly. You threaten the established order. You develop too fast, you question too much, you refuse to accept your place. So we're going to send a message. A message that will echo across the galaxy. Humans who reach too high will fall very, very far. He smiled, showing all his crystalline teeth. Your death will be blamed on the Tarxian separatists. A tragic accident. An unfortunate casualty of political tensions. Earth will receive condolences, but no justice. And humanity will learn to stay in its place. Elena stood perfectly still. Her heartbeat remained steady at 60 beats per minute. Her breathing was calm. She looked at the soldiers surrounding her, counting them, assessing their positions, noting their weapons and armor specifications. Old instincts activated, systems long dormant beginning to wake. Chancellor Drexith, she said quietly. I came here hoping this wouldn't be necessary. Hoping what wouldn't be necessary. Drexith sneered. Begging for your life? That's what prey does when cornered. Elena reached up slowly and removed the diplomatic pin from her lapel. She set it carefully on the speaking platform. Then she removed her suit jacket, folding it with precise, deliberate movements. Underneath, her white shirt revealed arms that were more toned than most diplomats possessed. Faint silver lines traced patterns along her forearms, barely visible unless you knew to look for them. I retired 15 years ago, Elena said, her voice dropping lower, something cold entering her tone. I left that life behind because I wanted to build instead of destroy. I wanted to talk instead of kill. I wanted to prove that humanity could be better than its worst instincts. She rolled up her sleeves and the silver lines began to glow faintly. Enhanced muscle fibers activating. Reinforced skeletal structure engaging. Neural accelerators coming online. Systems that had been dormant for years responding to her body's stress hormones and combat situation recognition protocols. But you've given me no choice, Elena continued. She looked up at Drexith, and her gray eyes had changed. They were harder now, colder, reflecting something ancient and terrible. My name is Dr. Elena Kovacs. I hold doctorates in xenopolitics and interspecies relations. I've negotiated 17 treaties and resolved countless diplomatic crises. She took a single step forward, and somehow that simple movement made the surrounding soldiers hesitate. But before all that, Elena said, and for the first time she smiled. It was not a diplomatic smile. It was something else entirely. I was Phantom 9, and I think it's time you remembered why that name used to make empires afraid. The first soldier moved, raising his weapon. Elena was already in motion, closing the distance before his finger reached the trigger. And in that moment, every being in the chamber understood that they had made a terrible, terrible mistake. Death unmasked, the Krell soldier never completed his movement. Elena's hand struck his wrist with surgical precision, and the weapon clattered to the floor. Her other hand found a vulnerable joint in his neck armor, and he collapsed like a puppet with severed strings. The entire exchange took less than 2 seconds. The chamber held its collective breath as the massive soldier hit the ground with a resonant thud that echoed through the stunned silence. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The other soldiers stared at their fallen comrade, their minds struggling to process what their eyes had witnessed. Humans were slow. Humans were weak. The intelligence reports had been clear. What they had just seen was impossible. Elena straightened slowly, her enhanced neural implants processing the tactical situation at speeds no unaugmented mind could achieve. 53 hostiles in a circular formation. Mixed weapon types, primarily plasma rifles and shock batons. Standard Krell combat armor with known vulnerabilities at the joints and neck seals. 17 civilians in immediate danger, including James, 842 additional beings in the chamber, most non-combatants. Chancellor Drexith positioned 12 meters away, reaching for something inside his ceremonial robes. Time seemed to stretch as her augmentations fully activated. The silver lines along her arms pulsed with bioluminescent energy, visible now to everyone watching. Her breathing remained controlled, but her heart rate had increased to optimal combat levels. Adrenaline mixed with synthetic compounds designed by Earth's finest military scientists flooded her system. She had hoped never to feel this again. The cold clarity that came with becoming a weapon instead of a person. The memories came unbidden. 23 years of service. 47 classified operations across 15 star systems. Missions that prevented wars, toppled corrupt governments, and eliminated threats that would have cost millions of lives. She had been the scalpel that Earth wielded in the darkness. Precise and lethal and utterly without mercy when circumstances demanded. Phantom 9 didn't fail missions. Phantom 9 didn't leave witnesses. Phantom 9 was the ghost that made monsters check under their beds. But Elena Kovacs had buried that ghost. She had walked away, hoping to prove that humanity could solve problems without violence. Hoping to show the galaxy that humans were more than their capacity for destruction. Drexeth had destroyed that hope. The second soldier attacked, joined immediately by 3 others. They moved with trained coordination, trying to overwhelm her with simultaneous strikes from multiple angles. Elena's combat protocols analyzed their approach vectors in microseconds. She ducked under the first plasma bolt, feeling the superheated air singe her hair. Her leg swept out, catching the second soldier at the knee joint where armor plates overlapped. The reinforced bone in her shin shattered the weaker connection, and the soldier toppled sideways. She rolled forward, coming up inside the guard of the third attacker. Her palm strike hit his chest plate with enough force to crack the composite material. The soldier flew backward, crashing into 2 of his comrades. The 4th soldier swung a shock baton at her head. Elena caught his wrist, twisted, and used his own momentum to flip him completely over her shoulder. He landed hard enough to dent the chamber floor. 8 seconds had passed. 5 soldiers down. The remaining Krell abandoned their defensive formation and charged as a mass. It was a tactical error born of rage and disbelief. They were elite warriors, trained from childhood in the arts of combat. They had conquered 12 species and subjugated 7 more. They had never known defeat. They could not conceive that a single human, a species they viewed as prey animals, could possibly threaten them. Elena moved through them like water flowing around stones. Every motion was economical, efficient, wasting no energy on flourish or excess. She struck at weak points that most species didn't even know they had. Joints and nerve clusters and structural vulnerabilities that she had studied for years. Her strikes weren't wild or angry. They were clinical, precise, delivered with the same detached professionalism she brought to treaty negotiations. A plasma bolt grazed her shoulder, burning through her shirt and scorching her skin. The pain was immediate and severe, but her neural implants dampened it to a manageable level. She noted the injury, calculated its impact on her combat effectiveness, and continued moving. Another soldier tried to grab her from behind. She dropped her weight, broke his grip, and threw him into 2 others approaching from her left. The chamber had descended into absolute chaos. Delegates were screaming, trying to flee or hide or simply understand what they were witnessing. The council speaker chimed frantically for security, but the station's response teams couldn't reach the sealed chamber. James had taken cover behind the speaking platform, his face frozen in shock. He had worked with Ambassador Kovacs for 18 months, had shared countless meals and conversations with her, and had never suspected that she was anything more than an exceptionally skilled diplomat. Drexeth watched the battle with growing horror. His soldiers, his elite guard, were falling like wheat before a scythe. The human moved with impossible speed and grace, her every action perfectly calculated. This was not the desperate flailing of prey fighting for survival. This was the methodical work of an apex predator, culling the herd. Elena disarmed another soldier, using his own weapon to disable 3 others with precisely aimed shots. She didn't kill when she could incapacitate. Despite everything, despite the violence being forced upon her, she still held to certain principles. These soldiers were following orders. They didn't deserve death. just defeat. 30 seconds into the engagement, 23 soldiers were down. The remaining 30 had begun to realize their mistake, but training and pride kept them attacking. They came in waves, trying to use their numbers to overwhelm her. Elena met each wave with the same cold efficiency. She broke bones, shorted out armor systems, and exploited every weakness in their equipment and formation. A particularly large Krell managed to land a solid hit, his armored fist catching her ribs. Elena felt 2 of them crack despite her reinforced skeletal structure. She absorbed the impact, redirected her momentum, and used the soldier's extended arm as a lever to flip him completely over. He crashed into a section of seating, and the composite material crumpled under his weight. 50-5 seconds. 41 soldiers down. The last 12 backed away, their weapons raised but their confidence shattered. They looked at each other, then at their fallen comrades, then at the small human standing calmly in the center of the carnage. Her white shirt was stained with blood, both her own and theirs. Her breathing was slightly elevated but controlled. Her gray eyes swept across them with the same detached assessment she might give to a diplomatic briefing document. "Drop your weapons," Alina said quietly. Her voice carried clearly through the stunned silence of the chamber. "This is your only warning." The soldiers hesitated. Pride warred with survival instinct. Then, one by one, their weapons clattered to the floor. They had been trained to fight enemies, to face death with courage and honor. But this was something different. This was facing a force of nature, something that couldn't be fought or reasoned with, only survived. Elena nodded once, acknowledging their surrender. Then she turned to face Chancellor Drexeth.